afternoon.
So we're reading from the first words of Christ. So can I ask if you would all open your Bibles, please, and go with me to Luke chapter 23, verse 23 to 34. Say amen when you're there. Are you there? Verse 33, when they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Let's read verse 34 together. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. I remember about 2 years ago, there was a sermon here, and there was a question that was asked at the beginning. It said, what's the most important aspect to a relationship? Does anyone know the answer? No? Scott, what do you think? Trust. That's a good one, but it wasn't the answer back then. Pastor Ed, forgiveness. And I remember because in my head I was thinking, surely it must be love, right? Like it's a relationship, so surely it must be love. But then I thought about it, and when we forgive someone who has trespassed against us, love is already there because you forgive them out of love.
Amen.
So today we're going to be talking about forgiveness. Me and my sister Janina, we're going to be talking two parts. And it's about Jesus' forgiveness on the cross. While he was on the cross, or while they were digging the nails into his hands, and that pain, that tremendous pain, excruciating suffering, Jesus asked the Father, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Here was a moment of great emotional and physical pain, a moment of such suffering. You probably curse or seek vengeance on your enemies, right? If someone does something wrong to you, it's hard to ask for forgiveness straight away, right? You ask them, I don't ask for revenge or vengeance, but no, Jesus asked for forgiveness. His prayer was one of ungratified, merciful love and unselfishness. Yes, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Not only do we see the merciful heart of God, we see Jesus' purpose. He came to bring forgiveness to you and me, and to us sinners who willingly, and he will willingly do it without contempt. His prayer on the cross puts into practice the principle he taught at the Sermon on the Mount. Do you remember that sermon? Okay, Matthew chapter 5, 43 to 44 said, You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But truly I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That is exactly what Jesus did on the cross. Despite his pain, despite the whippings, despite the lashings, his one thought, his one prayer, his one request from the Father was to forgive them. And that brings me back to the question I asked in the beginning. What's the most important aspect to a relationship? It's forgiveness. And that is exactly, and that sermon stuck with me because I thought to myself, surely it must be love because of, it's a relationship, so it must be love. But then I thought love was already there. When you forgive someone, you love them enough to forgive them. And it's the same with Christ, because love was already there, because Jesus was already sent down to earth as the incarnate from God. That was his ultimate grace, his ultimate sacrifice. At the cross, love was already there, but at the cross, forgiveness was found there. And that is what we as Christians must look to, that even as Christians, even if we are just hurt in such a way that it just seems so unforgivable. We must follow Jesus' example to just forgive and not forgive and forget, but forgive and accept what they have done. Not in such a harmful way, but forgive and accept and love your enemies, love your friends, love your persecutors. And so if Jesus was willing for the Father to forgive the very man who murdered him, even in his pain, what sinner is beyond the reach of his mercy and our own? Anyone who repents their sin will not perish but be saved by the pure grace of God. Amen?
Amen.
When I want to try this little exercise, when I say Jesus said, you say forgive. Okay? Jesus said,
Forgive.
when others hurt us, Jesus said,
Forgive.
when we hurt others, Jesus said,
Forgive.
when someone has really hurt you, as in skin deep, really piercing the heart, even then, Jesus said,
Forgive.
and when Jesus' enemies said, crucify him, he said,
Forgive.
someone who can say that is willing to forgive anyone, no matter what we have done, as long as we come to him in faith. If he is willing to forgive them, if he is willing to ask the Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, then he is willing to receive and forgive you too. Thank you.
Wasn't that message beautiful?
Yes.
So I'll be speaking of grace, the second component we explored in this verse. So, what is the meaning of grace? Well, thank the Lord for Google, because it says that grace is the free and undeserved favor from God to mankind. Today I want to explore one of the last words that show this great free and undeserved favor from God. Our anchor verse is Luke 23, verse 34. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. So we already know in this verse, as Jesus was already nailed to the cross, he uttered these words to the people who were sneering and crying out for his crucifixion. But wait, isn't that strange? How can Jesus be uttering words of forgiveness to the people who were trying to murder him? How is it that Jesus, even in his dying and crippled state, be uttering words of grace to the people who seemingly did know what they were doing? It's because Jesus, in his innocence, and despite becoming the embodiment of pain and suffering on the cross, he knew that this undeserved pain would bring forth undeserved forgiveness and undeserved grace from God. Jesus knew that despite the people's seemingly conscious decision to crucify, torment, and to crucify, torment, and deny him, he knew that they were not conscious about the plan God had for them. That from the heart-wrenching pain endured on the cross, there would be a chance that all the pain that man had carried from the disobedience in Genesis and will carry in the future, even more the ultimate fate of eternal damnation, that would all be freely replaced with forgiveness from man, as it was paid by Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. Meaning to say that Jesus' crucifixion symbolized and shows the free and deserved favor from God. He died for me and you, so that we may have this free gift of grace and forgiveness. Jesus knew this, and that's why he died, for the people who were crying out for his crucifixion, to those who sinned against him. As it says in Romans 5:8, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: for whilst we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So, how can we apply this amazing example of grace in our lives? There will be times when your own bitterness will take hold of you. I mean, am I right? And because we forget the grace of God on us, we act on it. Like Jesus was mocked and hurt, people will hurt us because of who we are and our stance with the truth. As every single day in this world, it becomes more and more dark. Even more, it seems that the norm that is causing the perversion of our society is, the phrase eye for an eye. To get back for what they did, to harbor the same hatred to those who hate us, to condemn them as they condemned us. But Jesus' last word, forgive them for they do not know what they do, helps us understand that maybe these people do not know the price paid by Jesus, and helps us turn our cheeks towards those, away from those who persecute us. Instead, showing them grace and forgiveness, as Jesus did for those who persecuted him. So, this is my challenge today, church. Is everyone awake?
Yes.
Will you show and act with grace? Will you show grace to those people at work, at school, at your uni, despite the pain and lies they throw at you? Jesus' pain was unfathomable. He was brought down, doubted, mocked, and jeered at. But even in that state, he had the strength to utter words of forgiveness and grace to those individuals. Be encouraged today, church, because now you know what Jesus knew as he cried out, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Because of this free and undeserved gift and for forgiveness and favor from God, we are no longer a slave to defeat, we are no longer a slave to pain, we are no longer a slave to the lies thrown at us. We are no longer a slave to hate. It will be hard, I know, I've experienced it. But to show grace to those people who bring you down, hurt you, and mock you. But Jesus never promised a pain-free, guilt-free, easy life. I know being Filipino, free is amazing. But I will leave you this question to ponder on as we remember his death and resurrection this weekend. Will you show this undeserved free gift to those who hurt you? Will you forgive those who do not know the free and undeserved favor of God? May the source of this amazing grace and mercy be with you all. Amen.
Amen.